Okay.
All right, so tonight we have with us Deborah Green. She's the president of Marion Audubon, and she is going to talk to us about the North Shore Birding Festival that is coming up in December. And it's held at Lake Apopka, which is the #1 hotspot in Florida. So it's a very exciting event, and we're excited to hear more about it. Thanks, Deborah, for being here.
Thank you, Michelle, for inviting me. Okay, well, it happens. I was just informed today that Fort DeSoto has passed Lake Apopka North Shore.
Oh, no.
Just currently, and I believe it was from Hurricane Ian. They must have got a new bird in. But in any case, it's very rich in bird life. And I'm kind of combining two shows. One is just about the lake and what's been done. Sorry, my voice is froggy. And then I'm going to tell you all about the festival. Okay. So again, thank you for inviting me. And so I'm going to say why it's so great for seeing birds. I'm going to talk about 1998 to 2012, the restoration efforts, and then 2013 to present, how we got public access to the North Shore, and a little bit about Marion Audubon's involvement. And the purpose to restore and maintain Lake Apopka. That's the purpose of the North Shore. And keep Lake Apopka wild, no feeding or harassing. And I'm going to talk about the history of the North Shore agriculture. Okay, here's a ash-throated flycatcher, one of the special birds of the North Shore in the winter. It's a western bird that is typically seen every winter. A few of them show up. So the drive, the Lake Apopka Wildlife Drive, I'll tell you a little bit about how it got started. And I presume most of you have been there, right? Throat. So what happened was there was a COVID shutdown in March of 2020. And then they decided to reopen it because people were in their own cars in June of 2020. And Marion Audubon stepped up to help the district. Now, the thing about the district out there on the North Shore is that they don't have staff to manage it. It's not funded like a park. It's not staffed like a park. When they opened the drive in 2015, they had changed the hours from Monday through Thursday, from a 5-day week to Monday through Thursday, their work hours, so that they could leave it open without, trucks and all going back and forth Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So that's how we got the wildlife drive open. And the district made us this very nice shelter there at the beginning. And these panels, we had gotten National Audubon collaborative grants to do these educational panels. Anyway, this is our shelter, Marion Audubon's, and we are there every Saturday and Sunday, 10 to 3. We started this after COVID, so we've been doing it now since 2020, a little over 2 years. And yeah, it's a big volunteer effort, but it helps to keep everything going smoothly without any staff out there. And there's a second shelter by the pump house and the bridge that the intention was that would be used for more bird information, but we haven't ever had the volunteers to do anything with that one. Just once a year when we celebrate the anniversary is the only time we can use that one. Okay, if you know the drive, you know that there's a first kiosk on the left after this garden, and that's where you can turn around and go back out if you aren't going to go through. But once you go through, you're committed, and it's going to take about 2 hours most days. Fridays, you just have the aficionados, retirees and all, birders and photographers. And so it goes smoothly on Fridays, but Saturdays and Sundays, you get the families and the out-of-towners. So in the beginning, there wasn't any public access. And I don't know if the slideshow includes about why, because of the bird kill in '98. But two of my colleagues in Orange Audubon worked with Orange County to start the Birdapalooza Festival that created more public interest in getting access to the North Shore. So Orange County opened the Loop Trail in 2013, and Lake County completed the portion to the Green Mountain in about 2016. And Lake Apopka Wildlife Drive, we call it LAWD, opened May of 2015. And as I just said, it was only open Friday, Saturday, Sundays. And I remind you that St. Johns River Water Management District is a water management district, not a park service. Now, the whole purpose of the 20,000 acre North Shore is to improve water quality in Lake Apopka, and it is improving, but there's muck on the bottom that gets stirred up. This shows a heavy degree of algae right now. At this point, a few years ago, right now, the algae got down as they got more phosphorus out, but then the hydrilla started growing, so it's very tricky. So some of the things that improve water quality are the marsh flowway, shad harvesting, littoral plantings, and there's some new projects. So this is eelgrass, and this actually is a photo I took at the on the Wekiwa River, which is a very good condition waterway. But the eelgrass is growing in Lake Apopka. It is growing, and that's a great sign because the fish like to live in it and feed in it. So there's a pilot project way back in November of 1990, and I was a professor and brought my students to see that. And then they followed it with an actual marsh flowway. So what my students got to see back then was the use of a Secchi disc, this round dish that's black and white for visibility, and you drop it down and it disappears. And at the beginning of this flowway, it would disappear after 8 inches. It was so murky. But then as the water went through the marshes, which basically is imitating nature of taking out the sediment and nutrients, then they would drop it down and you could see it for 8 feet. So yes, restoring marshes with this marsh flowway does work. And this is what it looks like. It's quite a big project. It's got these different cells and it puts a lot of water through it. And the water is mostly going north by gravity. You know that Apopka goes into the Oklawaha chain of lakes, and the gravity flows north. They do use alum to precipitate out phosphate in the water, and then it's just at the bottom. If you know the pump house, that's got a big pond where that treatment is done, and all that's been done since '93. And then they take out gizzard shad, a rough fish that is a bottom feeder and takes up a lot of phosphorus. So getting those fish out of the system is one positive way to get phosphorus out of the system. By the way, in your nutrients, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, it's the phosphorus that's the big culprit here. And so what do they do with the gizzard shad? It tastes terrible. They tried all kinds of things, and currently they sell it to Louisiana for crayfish bait. Now, but planting the littoral vegetation really worked good. This is back in 2013 when they first put it in, and the plant is spatterdock. And there's like a band of it offshore. I don't know exactly how many feet it is, but when you go and if you take the lakeside loop, you'll see that band has filled in beautifully since 2013, almost 10 years. And other plants have filled in, and both fish underwater and birds above, you are using it for habitat, and it breaks the storm surge. So it's a good thing that they did. Yeah, here's a little later how it's all filling in. And they also plant, that's eelgrass down there in the foreground, and they plant that bulrush as another positive plant. The latest thing is this phosphorus-free company that has a performance contract with the district. They're getting paid by the pound of phosphorus that they take out. And that was quite a big deal. They really have a big footprint in there, but that, hopefully that is helping. So the popularity of the Lake Apopka Wildlife Drive grows. People love alligators. It's a photographer's paradise. And there's a real community of photographers, particularly on Facebook. They're all egging each other on and getting better and better. And the one that we manage is the Lake Apopka Wildlife Drive. And because we're so collaborative with the Water Management District, they'll ask us to post stuff for the public, like about the closure. By the way, after Hurricane Ian, it was closed because, well, in Hurricane Irma, the levee that separated the lake from the rest of the wetlands was overtopped. And so the whole thing was very flooded. But they raised the levee 3 feet, and in Hurricane Ian, it did not overtop. So that was good. But, you know, there was tons of rain, 18 inches or whatever, and they didn't have the means to pump it off. So the roads the shoulders were high and it was unstable. So they only opened it last weekend, but now it is open again. There were 124,000 visitors in 2019, which is just crazy, in 3 days a week. But in 2021, the figure is 168,000. So it is amazingly popular. And what's our involvement? I already mentioned that we got collaborative grants and we did these kiosks. We celebrate the anniversary each year. And then we started the North Shore Birding Festival. And I will switch to this next section and tell you more about that. It's going to be December 1st through 5th this year. It's its 7th year. And we're promoting ecotourism as responsible travel to natural areas that conserves the environment, sustains the well-being of the local people, and involves interpretation and education. So we invoke that definition by the International Ecotourism Society whenever we need it. Like at one point, there was a seaplane base that was getting started, and there were plans to do a lot with commercial airboats, and they were calling that ecotourism. And that assumes that the seaplanes are going to go down and look at the egrets and make them fly up, because that's what the people would want to see. And that assumes that the airboats are going to do the same. But we fought that because it's not good for the wildlife, and it's not good for the local people who are enjoying the quiet out there. And it doesn't have anything to do with interpretation and education. So this definition has been useful to us. And on the business cards that we distribute instead of a flyer, we've been doing these business cards, and I think it's good. But on the back, we have that definition. Okay. So now I'll tell you more about the festival. This year, we're up to 70 trips. And there's still a lot of good ones open. And I could show you how to register if anybody has any questions. But the heart of it all are the guides. And because it's such a great birding spot, we can get these guides. And I'll tell you about them individually, but my friend Susan put this montage together of the pictures. So this year we have 3 that are new visiting us, and I'll tell you about each one. I don't know why this is fuzzy, but Hannah and Eric are podcasters from Oregon, Cannon Beach, Oregon, where they manage a hotel. And that's a place where you can see tufted puffins right there from the hotel. I've got to go there sometime. It sounds really cool place. And they're very active birders around around the world and going to festivals and, fun. So they offered to come and we said, yay, come ahead. Now, Orange Audubon has a relationship with Wildside Nature Tours. We've been doing trips with them for a couple of years now. And by the way, if your chapter wants to do that, and I know there's other companies that do it, but we like Wildside, and they kick back $100 per person for the trips they do. So we just recently went with them to Maine, and Alex Lamoureux led that, and I'll talk about Alex in a second, but because there were 10 of us, he got a second leader, and that was this Alan Needle, who works for Manomet Bird Observatory in Massachusetts, which is primarily focused on shorebirds and a very esteemed, I don't know how many years old organization, I think 75-year-old organization. So it was really fun having Alan as a co-leader, and he has a brilliant ear. So he's going to lead Birding by Ear and quite a few other trips. And he's actually bringing his girlfriend, Emily, who is senior communications manager for Manomet and an artist. And she's going to give a drawing from nature workshop on Saturday afternoon. Somebody should mute. Okay, then again, for the third year, and we're really thrilled to have them, and I know Michelle knows them too, we're going to have Louise Glaze and Mariah Pinewich. And they're South Florida birders that are the hawk watchers in the Keys during the season, which now the season is August through the end of November. So they'll be coming here right after they close the hawk watch. And I have a whole video on our YouTube channel with Louise explaining how you bring the hawks, how the hawks come down the peninsula. And Mariah is an outstanding spotter of the raptors. It's a real talent and passion of theirs. So anyway, we're happy that they'll be leading a whole variety of trips. And then Alex Lamoureux is really one of our country's top young birders, and he works now full-time for Wildside leading tours. He and his girlfriend, she lives in Cape May. She's the bird banding station manager, and they'll both be there with us leading a variety of tours. And by the way, we're going with him to California. 9 of us from Orange Audubon are signed up for a trip in August to California with him. We really like him. And Gallus Quigley works as a planner, biologist, and trails coordinator with the Lake County Parks and Trails Division. And he's one of the stalwarts of the birding community in Orlando. He runs the Zellwood Christmas bird count. And with his former wife, Beck, he formed the company Archaeopteryx Tours, and they do various trips around. So Gallus will be leading trips to Lake County places, as well as I think one of them is to Clay Island, part of the North Shore. And then David Simpson is one of Florida's top birders. He's a county lister. He has a list for every county. And he's been coming to the festival for quite a few years. And Chris Newton, he works at Animal Kingdom and lives now in Polk County, but he's an enthusiastic, wonderful leader, amazing birder, over 700 ABA species. And so he'll be leading trips the whole festival. And then we just added a photo trip with Steve Shaluta. There's a wonderful photographer from West Virginia, professional photographer for the state of Virginia, West Virginia, who's been down here a while, and he's taken to bird photography using fill flash. And so his trip will have a focus on fill flash, and it's going to be at Sawgrass Island Preserve in Umatilla. And his co-leader is going to be Maxfield Weekly, who I know is part of your community, and I got his contact information from Michelle. And I personally love, I was a community college biology professor, and I really like promoting young people and giving them things for their resume and, you know, building self-esteem and stuff in that they can do this. And so I'm happy to welcome Max. So the website is northshorebirdingfestival.com. This is the 7th year. The website is very easy to navigate. You got your schedule page, which now has an easy to see schedule. I think it's 3 pages. And then all the details on each trip, including pictures. And then you got your speaker and leader page. And then you got locations and lodging where there's a map. And then we give some hotel suggestions for out of town visitors. And then registration explains a little bit about our festival, because this is different than the big festivals. We don't have an exhibit hall, and you meet at the site of the trips, and you'll get an email in advance with any tips, but you just have to get there on time and be a little bit hardy rather than spoon-fed and go to one central place, and there's no buses or anything. And before COVID, we really encouraged the carpooling because parking might not have been very available. But since COVID, we're just letting people do it as they wish. And we've kept the numbers in the trips pretty low. Some have only 10, some have 16, but I don't think any of them, or almost none of them, go up to 20 like we used to before COVID. So one thing that happened after COVID was that we heard that Wekiwa Springs State Park, which is a fantastic park in just north of Orlando, was going to be renting out their youth camp for the first time since the COVID shutdown. And so we were able to get in and rent the youth camp as a place to put up leaders from out of town. And that also opened up possibilities of trips. And even after last year, we started with the dinners and keynotes there. So Wekiwa is just such a great park. It has plant communities ranging from signature sandhill to river swamp, hardwood, hammock, and mesic flatwoods. And some of the birds that are special are the Bachman sparrow. It's easy to see there. A little less easy in the when they're not calling, not singing in the spring, but we'll find them. And then there's a lot of red-headed woodpeckers there, brown-headed nuthatches. So it's well-burned sandhill. So at Wekiwa, we have sandhill specialty field trips, photo techniques workshop, I'll tell you about in a second, and keynote dinner series. So trip 35 is the Wekiwa Springs photo tour, and that's with Cindy Manel and Leanne Pussabat, and that's got a lot of, there's just a lot of photogenic places there in the park, and that's a morning trip on Saturday. And then we have a kayak trip. I'm forgetting what it is, maybe Saturday, trip 17. Yeah, that should be Saturday morning. You rent your kayak there at the concession or bring your own, and you go all the way up the beautiful Wekiwa River to Rock Springs and then a ways up, and 3-hour kayak trip. So starting last year, we're doing the keynote dinners in the Wekiwa Springs State Park Youth Camp Dining Hall. And my colleagues on the festival committee do a great job with the food. They pick a good caterer, and then they do all kinds of little special things. And so it's a nice dinner. And the price is $30 with the keynote and the dinner, and $20 for students, and $10 up to age 7. Excuse me, up to age 17. So now one thing about any of the night trips is you have to get into the park. You have to pay your admission, and before the park closes at 5:30. But basically shoot for 5. So you might as well come in earlier and look around at the youth camp there, which is a beautiful sandhill, and then join us for the dinner. And then we've got it timed so that you can go to do the night activities. The Friday keynote will be given by Hannah and Eric Go Birding, and they're going to talk about 5 years of podcasting. So just some of their adventures. And the Saturday keynote is by Rainier Munguia, who's an Audubon person from down the peninsula a little bit in Lake region, Lakeland area. And he'll talk about birding abroad, joys of traveling for birds, because he leads a lot of international trips. And then we do the flashlight tram ride. The park is providing us this buggy ride at night, and we'll stop and call for owls and stuff. It's pretty fun. And then the owl prowl is where the hardcore leaders are going to try to find you all some owls. And this is Luis looking for some spiders in between looking for owls. So the festival's featured area is in Lake Apopka North Shore. I'm sorry. And so, you know, this map, the green area is the North Shore, and I'm going to tell you about the locations. So basically, you're coming up 441, or you guys are coming down 441, go across this Duda Road, or Jones Road, and then make a left on 448A and go all the way to the end, and then you're right at the edge of this property. And that's called the North Shore Trailhead, or the McDonald Canal Boat Ramp. And what it is there's a little canal, McDonald Canal, going across here that joins the big canal, the AB Canal, Apopka-Beauclair Canal, which joins Lake Apopka to Lake Beauclair. Excuse me. And just orienting on the Lake Apopka North Shore, these were all the farms. The farms polluted the lake over time, and now they've been bought out, and this is the restoration area. And all these purple dots are the different locations of the trips, and this is on the locations and lodging page. And McDonald Canal, this is what it looks like. It's a Lake County park, and they've done nice landscaping. And that's where we gather for trips. This is before COVID, where the trips were bigger. Now they're much smaller. And then we come back and eat lunch in this pavilion and some tables outside. And so this is a gathering place, and people enjoy comparing notes of what they're seeing and meeting other people. And that is where there is a restroom. So even if the trip is focused on an area, not necessarily this particular trailhead, I make the trip start from here just because it's the only one that has bathrooms. So here's what it looks like as you approach up Jones Road, coming in, and come across a little bridge. There's parking, there's a lot of parking. So you'll be instructed as to which parking area to use, whether this one or closer up to the bathrooms. So here you are coming across a little bridge, and then up here, and you have to come around here, and that's the boat ramp. And then here's the bathrooms, and here's the pavilion, right? I guess that's the pavilion. And here's the parking. So that is our center of operation, okay? Other than Wekiwa, our evening center of operation. And by the way, they cut a path here, and this is very good for birding. It's just very weedy area, but it's great for buntings and sparrows. And just moving farther down, you go through this gate, and there's the shad harvesting is right here, taking the shad out. And this shows that path I mentioned that's very weedy, but good. And the birding by ear trips on Saturday, we have 2 small sessions led by Alan that I told you about, and then Scott Simmons is a great local birder. Those are just walk around trips in this area. One will go one way and one will go the other. And white-crowned sparrows are there in the winter. clay-colored sparrows, grasshopper sparrows. I'm sorry, these are fuzzy. They have bluebird box signs and bluebirds. So from the parking, there's gates. And by the way, in the festival, we have the combination to the gates, and the leaders have all scouted, and each trip that goes back into this backcountry has to know it, so nobody gets lost. Okay, so you go in and you go on these gravel roads, and immediately you're surrounded by birdie terrain. I mean, there could be any variety of birds in here, rails, and there's palm warblers, barred owls. You might see bobcats in the early morning, downy woodpecker, bald eagle. So this area, the McDonald Canal boat ramp, these are the hours. We're going to have them open it earlier because some of our trips start at 6 a.m., the sunrise trips. And here again is a map to it. So you're coming up here, and then that's the boat ramp, and this is all that parking I was showing you before. But okay, so where are people going on the trips? They're going to go through that gate here and go here, and then over to here and cross the AB Canal Bridge, and then down here, and then down here to the Lakeside Tower for sunrise. And then they might come around here. When you're doing it yourself, that you can park in the Clay Island parking lot, but I mean, for you guys from Marion County, that might be convenient to come from this end sometimes on your own. But we're starting all from here since there's bathrooms there. But anyway, there's all this territory, all these different roads to go, and your leaders can pick based on what sightings have been done in advance. And on the Apopka Beauclair Canal, we have one canoe trip, a kayak trip. It's not signing up very fast because we don't have any way to rent. That just proved too expensive for the participants. So it would made it just if you have your own kayak and you want to do it. But so you're coming down this AB Canal, you come to the bridge, and there's actually a barn owl. One or more barn owls are under that bridge, so that's a fun thing to see. And there's there are a lot of purple gallinules and the spatterdock on the AB Canal. So if anybody has a kayak and wants to check that out, it might be something you would want to do on your own later. Look for that trip. Now, rarities show up, and it's all about the scouting as to who finds them, if we find them. And one was the smooth-billed Annie. This was the year we found the smooth-billed Annie over here by the pump station. And then that was, I think, not last year, but the year before. And then 2 years before that, we had a groove-billed Annie, actually 2 groove-billed Annies. The groove-bills are from the Southwest, and the smooth-bill is from South Florida. And so I was trying to explain that if you come out from this side, that's the Clay Island trailhead, which is a cool way to go in, but there's no facilities on that side. We're going to be coming in here, coming across the bridge. Here's the bridge. Okay, so the district had built these 4 observation towers to provide views of the restoration for politicians when they were working on how to get continued funding for the restoration. And so they're not used much because most of the activity now is shifted to the eastern side of the property where the wildlife drive is. But they're still out there, and people walk in or ride their bikes in. If a bird rarity like the Annie is found, people make the effort to walk in. Oh, I'm so sorry these aren't clicking in, but the sunrise trips, most of them go to this lakeside observation tower on Lake Apopka, and the angle is just right to get a beautiful sunrise. Those trips start at 6 just to get, which is dark still, but to make sure that the traveling to this observation tower is accomplished before the sun rises. And they have all good leaders that are photographers, as well as there's a birder leader that knows the property along. And one of the rarities that shows up is the vermilion flycatcher. And I'm sure you guys know vermilion flycatchers. The males are the ones that we get most excited about. It seems like we mostly have females or immatures over on the North Shore. And then there's merlins. This is a great photo. Tree swallows. And, you know, this is what the roads look like, just gravel roads. And, you know, you're just going to drive in a caravan and park and get out and bird. And, you know, it's just lots of habitat, like different canals. And here's the marsh flowway, the pumps, the way it pumps the water from the lake north through the marshes. And it turns out that in this marsh flowway last year, we started getting snail kites. And there was one spoonbill, and there was some green-winged teal. So the marsh flowway was really good. Then a whole nother area, and I'm kind of nearing the end of this story, is the Green Mountain Trailhead. And that they built a big scenic overlook, and it's like the highest area, and then they have this high scenic overlook. So there's actually switchbacks, and you might see a short-tailed hawk, eagle, and migrants in season. And this guy, Greg Gensheimer, is the co-founder of this Green Mountain Scenic Byway, and he's a friend of ours, ambassador. He'll be leading a walk, the Green Mountain Walk, as well as the trip to Ferndale, which is something, a Lake County preserve that was purchased as a result of this whole Green Mountain Scenic Byway. The Green Mountain Scenic Byway is on the western side of Lake Apopka. The effort to make, you know, to keep some of the property out of development and in these preserves, Lake County preserves, and also to make the bike trails more safer so people can enjoy the cycling out there. So the Ferndale Preserve, I think that trip filled up really fast, and there's a possibility we might add another trip if we had the right leader. The leaders that know the properties are the limiting factor in trips. They got Bundings there. Now, a new property that was bought with mitigation funds for the Wekiwa Parkway is Neighborhood Lakes over there on 46. And that is a paved path. So we're targeting, we're promoting as accessible, you know, wheelchair accessible and stuff. So Gallus Quigley, who is that Lake County Parks and Rec person, to promote it, he's leading that. So just because he's a good leader, you might want to check that one out. Or if you have anybody in the family that could use something accessible like this. And then this guy, Reinhard Geisler, is a wonderful photographer and birder. He's a chaser. He got pictures of all the species. And he offered to lead with his wife, 2 trips at Orlando Wetlands Park, photography and birding. And he's a volunteer out there, really likes that place. So he's leading Saturday trip 28 and Sunday trip 48 in the mornings. And then I think I already talked about this Wekiwa Springs photography trip. And so on the locations and lodging page, you have dots for all the different areas. And whereas we started with the North Shore, and over here is Wekiwa, we're branching out a little further all the time. You know, we used to be tag along to Space Coast Birding and Wildlife Festival, and it be sighted in January, right, a week before Space Coast, in hopes of getting some of their leaders and some of their participants. We did get some of their leaders, Greg Miller and then Alex Lamoureux, we got through that. But I don't think we ever got any of their participants. It was kind of in a different whole category. But now that is sadly not going to be operating, we're working our way farther east, and we have 2 Merritt Island trips led by some of those birders from over there. So these are the locations, 70 trips. It's quite a lot to manage, but they're small and they all have great leaders. And I think that's pretty much it. So I can just open this up if anybody has any questions. Is anybody there? Everybody's just asleep.
Thanks, Deborah. That was really fun and interesting. It's going to be a great festival, I know.
Yeah, so here's how you work the website. Just hit schedule. And this is something I just did 2 days ago. Michelle, don't you think this would have been useful when you registered?
Yes. I noticed this actually, after I signed in later again. And
it's something I had done before COVID, and then we just didn't do it. Because with our registration program, you're on your own to make sure you don't schedule conflicting trips that overbook yourself. So you got that to look at, and then there's a trip list that's 5 pages, and then I just made the festival brochure with lots of pictures, and then here are the descriptions of the trips with pictures. So you got plenty to look at, and then how do you know if they're filled? And by the way, here's the speakers and leaders. You've got profiles of all of them. I haven't made a current count. We keep adding leaders, wonderful leaders. And then the locations and lodging I've been telling you about, that has some suggestions about hotels. Registration just gives some explanation and contact. If you know any students, this is the travel scholarship invitation. We, based on the generosity of some of our past participants, we have still $400 scholarships for travel reimbursement scholarships to give out to students. And by the way, college students pay half price for all the trips. So like typically a morning trip without lunch is $40. And so the student will pay $20. With a box lunch, the trips are $50. And there is no additional registration fee for the festival. Everything's a la carte. So compared to other festivals, that's quite reasonable. So, and then how you find out if anything's full when you hit the register now and just make your account, then you'll be able to see what's already filled. So any questions? I hope I haven't kept you too long.
Deborah, I'm glad that you mentioned the student discount, because I think that's a great option for getting kids interested and have them try out the different trips that you have scheduled for them and all of that. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah, and particularly we wanted to get a critical mass of college students. And so we set 2 trips, Saturday and Sunday afternoon trips, call them Gen Z and millennials. And the idea is hopefully we'll get a critical mass. As a matter of fact, I've kind of got a catch thing so that older people don't sign up for them, which they always did in the past. But yeah, that's one bad thing about it for college students is the December dates are around finals. So I understand if the college thing isn't moving that fast. And I know that they like to do things last minute as well. But anyway, hopefully those will fill and we'll let them see the fun of a birding festival. I love birding festivals. I go to them around the country, which is how I wanted to set this up for the Lake Apopka North Shore. I thought we were right for it. And it is a fundraiser for Orange Audubon, because the leaders almost all are volunteering, and all the staff, there's no staff, it's all volunteers. So it is ending up to be a good fundraiser. And that is towards a nature center that we've been working on for a very long time to get that site. Very challenging in Central Florida where growth is so fast. But anyway, that's the whole story.
Deborah, we have a question.
Deborah, Stephanie had a question.
Okay, go ahead.
Stephanie was wondering if there are any, or if all of the tours are walking and if there are any driving tours.
Oh yeah, and that's marked under the description of each one, how much driving. Okay, so like Sunrise Trip 1, mostly driving, some walking. Okay, mostly driving, some walking. That's the majority, are mostly driving, some walking. In other words, you're driving back in that North Shore, you're parking, you're getting out of your vehicle and birding, but you might walk for a while there. And then some of them are completely walking. This one is walking. That's that one that's wheelchair accessible. Okay. I'm scrolling down. I'm going to come to Liz's picture. We really love Louise and Mariah. They are such good leaders. Michelle knows them. Let's see. And okay, the ones in green are for photographers. It took me a little while to get myself educated on the difference between a trip that a photographer would enjoy and a trip that a birder would enjoy. Being a birder, I don't really understand the photographer that well, but I was educated on it. And so we've made specific trips tapered to photographers, going at a slower pace, you know, trying to get the place with the right light and all that. So if you know, if you are a photographer or know any, those are the ones for you. This is the smooth-billed Annie. So cute in this picture anyway. There it is. This is in the marsh flowway that year. Was that last year?
It was that's the only time I've been, so I didn't even realize it was on there. But thank you for using it.
The beautiful picture. I like the background. Yeah, and these have moved up from the Toho area, these snail kites, and they've been there the last couple of years. Oh, and we have a Spanish-speaking trip 31, because we have some photographers who now I'm making into leaders on the wildlife drive. They're there all the time. They're just the deans of that wildlife drive, walking in, riding their bikes. And so I got them to lead a Spanish speaking trip, and it hasn't filled very well so far. So if you happen to know anybody that might like something like that, that's good. And then we got the Young Birders Club going. Orange Audubon does. It all started with this redhead kid who's a really good birder. And then we just started growing a critical mass. And so there's this one trip that is the Young Birders Field Trip. And it's very cheap. Let's see, what is it? $20 with lunch for the adult registering, and $10 for the child. So we have birding by bicycle this year, and so forth. The photo trip. Okay, there's a workshop indoors with Rainier Mungia, the one who was giving the keynote, and that's trip 39 indoors. And then trip 49 is the outdoor portion on the Lake Apopka Wildlife Drive. We have very limited access to the drive during hours when it is the drive open. And the people leading those trips understand that they've got to get out of the way of the normal visitors and not be of any nuisance. So that's what's going on there. And then young Emily from Manamet is going to do drawing with nature workshop, which we also have priced really cheap. And then here's the keynote. Oh, we go to the bird banding station at Lake Lotus Park on Sunday. And Orlando Wetlands Park is a wonderful park for photography. It's got roseates and all the wading birds. Here's the field portion of the photo trip. And here's that Green Mountain Byway. Newton Park is a cool little park on the south side of Lake Apopka Winter Garden area. And last 2 years, I think, they've had a bronzed cowbird, which is a rarity. And then the village birders invited us to do a golf course cart trip with them to see their waterfowl and their retention ponds, which apparently they get some interesting stuff. And so that's this trip. And then we're going to Emeralda Marsh, and that one is with this Max and Steve Shaluta. It's, I guess, Sunday. And then we have some scrub jay trips. We have several trips on which you can see scrub jays. As I mentioned, the birding on the AB Canal, you have to have your own kayak, but there is a barn owl that lives under the bridge. And then here's one of the millennials trips. And that's Mariah from the Florida Keys Hawk Watch. She is an expert at digiscoping, and she actually is a rep for Phone Scope, the company that sells the attachment for your phone to the scope. And she'll be teaching phone scoping at some point in trip 60. And there's a sunset trip. I don't know, it's probably already full. But this guy, Steve Coleman, is the dean of the Magnolia Park Sunset Photographers. He works at Disney, lives in Apopka, and on his way home every day, he would stop and shoot the sunset at Magnolia Park. And he just created a movement. And through Facebook and everything, people started joining him and shooting. And so we got him to teach a trip that they do go on the wildlife drive after hours. And then Monday's the last day, and we go down to Joe Overstreet in Three Lakes in Osceola County. You might see the scissortail flycatcher. And there's a few other sites, Lake County sites, Pine Meadows. And then I love this one, the best of birding is with Luis and Mariah on the wildlife drive on a Monday. And then there's a Wekiwa trip. And then there's 2 Merritt Island trips. And those are right there on the coast, so they can just go straight up to the Gull trip, which unfortunately is already full. So that is our festival. And I do hope you take advantage of it because the price is right and it's very friendly. Can I answer any more questions?
It doesn't look like there's any other questions. So thank you so much, Deborah, for being with us tonight and telling us about this festival. I'm signed up for 2 of the trips so far, so I'm very excited for it. Thank you.
Great. All right. Thank you again for inviting me, and I'll stop the share and I'll leave you all.
Thanks, Deborah. Looking forward to it.
Okay. Thank you again for having me. I'll leave now.
Bye. Bye.